Hello. Hi. So I am currently reading Caraval, the series by Stephanie Garber, and it's a very popular YA series, but I've actually never read it before. So I thought that I should like vlog a little bit from time to time. So I've already read the first book, which is also called Caraval. I've read the first book, and the reason that I am reading the entire series, like I'm gonna try and binge it over the course of the next couple of weeks or so. That's as much of a binge as I can do as an adult, and also as someone who's bedridden right now. Um, but I wanted to say that I really enjoyed the first book. There were some moments that I had some issues with, but we're just gonna skip over those for right now because for the first time, I read a book that made me draw. I'm not an artisty person. I'm not an artist. I'm not even artistic. The last time that a book actually inspired me so much was when I had a moment while reading these violent delights and our violent, like these are all the quotes from that series that I noted down, and then I ended up making this spread, which is a bit off topic. So, coming back to Caraval, I drew, and these are just the quotes of where these symbols first appeared, or that I noticed them first appear in the book. Like, I know for a fact this top hat is mentioned once before, but I only took note of this top hat in a way that I wanted to draw about it when I'd already drawn the symbol for Caraval, which is this thing up there, and obviously like the um, rays of the sun are not evenly spaced, and some of them are longer than the others. And the top hat was just a blob, and I had to like line it a bit, and even then, it's like, is it a top hat? Is it a button? Is it what is it? But yeah, this book, I really enjoyed it because one, it was told from the perspective of an older sister and everyone's older sister right here. And my little sister had just been here, and although she's not as reckless as Stella, she does share certain similarities with that girl. And I know in a different world they could be even more similar, and maybe if we lived in Caraval, perhaps they'd be the same person. And I read it right after she was here with me. Ooh. And it was a projection, a classic case of a projection. I'm not a therapist. Anyway, I read that. I liked it. I I keep saying I. Yeah, my point was that I really love the way things are described in this book. I really enjoyed the way that Scarlet, first of all, his name is Scarlet, which is a color. Then there's this swashbuckling sailor guy who seems to have some ulterior motive for coming to Caraval. Like, he's the one. Okay, so a little bit about the plot, which is like the first 20-30 pages. So it's not exactly a spoiler. Like, at this point, after reading as much as I'm about to mention, I went to the back cover of the book and I read the synopsis. And actually, the synopsis was more of a spoiler to me than what I'm just about to say. So this is not a spoiler in any way. So Caraval starts with these two sisters, Scarlett and Donatella Dragna, and they live on this island, and the dad's the governor of the place, and they've lost their mother when they were quite young. Like, she just left one day and never came back. And ever since then, the older sister Scarlett has been writing to Legend, who's the master of Caraval, which is this traveling circus come um, magic show come treasure hunt come 5-day performance basically. And she's been writing to them, trying to get them to come to their isle and perform there so that her and her little sister can attend and have some fun and merriment. And then finally, right when Scarlett's about to get married that year, Legend finally responds to her and sends her 3 tickets, 2 for her and her sister, and 1 for the older sister's fiance. And that's a guy, he's a count, that she's never seen, only written to like a bunch of times. And that's already sus, right? So Scarlett, the older sister, the judicious one, is like, well, we can't really go. My marriage is in 10 days, my wedding is in 10 days, and I can't just run away from my responsibilities. And their father is a really cruel man, and Scarlett sees her marriage as a way to escape him, and the Count has promised her that he will take care of both Scarlett and her sister. So, naturally, Donatella does the only logical thing anyone's younger sister would do. She kidnaps Scarlett with the help of the swashbuckling sailor guy that I mentioned before. Right. And then when Scarlett wakes up, Donatella is already on the island where this caravan is supposed to take place, and Julian, the sailor guy, is rowing her across to go to the island. And it was really interesting because her name is Scarlett, and also she feels things and emotions and experiences everything in certain colors. And I don't have the book with me, but I really liked the way that the book opened. Like, the first chapter was just one line, but after that, when we are actually introduced to Scarlett in present day, where our story begins, everything is in color. And that, plus the magic of Caraval and the way things are described, it was such a treat. It was a little delight to be able to read all of that and just imagine it very clearly as if I was standing right there. And yeah, this is young adult, but still, it was fun to read something with really plain and simple language that still evoked such a good response. So that's been my reading experience so far. Like I said, I had some issues with the first book, but I'm on to the second one now, and let's see how it all plays out. Uh, yep, I am excited. I am eager, and I'm gonna go read right now. So I'll talk to you guys a little bit later, maybe when I'm in the middle of the second book, or probably more likely when I've finished the second book as well. So see you all soon. Bye. Hello. Hi. So I'm reading Caraval, the series, and then I'll be reading Once Upon a Broken Heart, the series, which is right there. So the last time you heard from me, I was reading Caraval, and I don't think I finished it. I had finished it, but I hadn't started Legendary, and I was gonna check in back with you guys once I'd read a little bit of that. I finished both Legendary and Finale. So I'll just talk a little bit about both of those books. Um, I read Legendary by Stephanie Garber. I liked this one better than I liked Caraval, mostly because there was more action, more adventure. So this is the second book of the series, and it follows Tella, who's the younger Dragna sister, and we see her participating in Caraval. Only this time, it's not a game, or is it? Because that's what happened with Scarlett, right? She got too swept up in her game, but it is all a game. Except, did someone actually say that this time? Also, at the end of the first book, we find out, oh, this is like mild spoilery territory. We find out that Donatella has been talking to someone who is her friend, who has been helping her from behind the scenes, and they've made some kind of deal where she needs to find out Legend's true identity and reveal it to this friend of hers. So we follow her as she is enmeshed in all of this, and there's a lot of adventure that goes on in this series, and it was so much fun. I really, really enjoyed this one. Hmm. In the final book of the series called Finale, it is the finale. We follow both of the sisters alternatingly, and it is, on one hand, the culmination of everything that has happened in the first two books, but also a lot of new concepts are introduced, and it gets even more magical and more adventurous. But my thing or like my one bone to pick with this book was that there is a lot that goes on, and maybe we could have broken this down into two books and explored all the concepts. Like, I loved the book, don't get me wrong, but on the other hand, it also felt a little bit like some concepts were taken lightly, some things that could have complicated um, things in the storyline, and then they were just never mentioned, or the repercussions were never brought up again, and it like wrapped up pretty quickly. From what it seemed like, I had that panic of, oh my god, there's only a certain number of pages left, how are we going to finish this? But then it did end up getting resolved, which was like my issue with the first book as well, that there were certain things that got fixed way too easily, and in this book too, it felt like certain things got fixed way too easily and certain things were just swept under the rug. Maybe I'll find my answers in Spectacular, or maybe I'll find the answers in Once Upon a Broken Heart, but that has been my reading experience so far. I still really enjoyed this series, I love it. I do think I would recommend it to people, and I am now proud of myself whenever I look at this bookshelf, because this trilogy is pretty prominently displayed, and now I can just look at them fondly and say, hey, I read this. So that is nice. And I guess I'll see you in a few minutes, in a few seconds for you, when I talk about Once Upon a Broken Heart. So it's been a while since I checked in. Last we spoke, I had finished the Caraval trilogy, and I was supposed to start reading the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and I was also supposed to read Spectacular. But for the time being, I have decided not to pick up Spectacular because I did not own a copy of the book, and I'm trying really hard to not purchase any more books. So, like I said, it's been a while since I last checked in. In that time, I saw some creators using books to attach their microphones to, and I must say it's quite easier than holding onto the mic like this. So I like it, and I think I'm gonna do that. And I think this will be the default book. And I think I'm using "and" a lot, and I think that this is not gonna fit into frame. Anyway, so let's talk about the books that I've been reading. Let's talk about the Stephanie Garber Caraval universe. I don't actually know what it is called, but more importantly, I want to know, what are we saying? People who've read Caraval, who've read Once Upon a Broken Heart, are we saying Jax, or is it like supposed to be Jacques or something? I'm gonna say Jax because I don't know, and if it is Jacques, shocks. Just let me off the hook because I don't know any better. Right. So I had finished reading the Caraval trilogy, and I was gonna pick up Once Upon a Broken Heart. Once Upon a Broken Heart is another trilogy which is set in the same universe as Caraval, with it's the spin-off of one of the characters who was a side character in the second and third books. We met him in the second book, and he was kind of like, he had a big role, but not exactly a main role in the books. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, so just bear with me for a moment. And then we have Once Upon a Broken Heart, which follows Jax, the Prince of Hearts, after the ending of Finale, which is the final book in the Caraval series. So, in this book, we also follow a main character called Evangeline Fox, who was raised in, what's the name of the, I'm so sorry. She's in the kingdom where Caraval is based, the Meridian Empire. We follow Evangeline, who was raised in the Meridian Empire, but her mother was from the magnificent North, which is like this whole different country to the north of the Meridian Empire. And due to certain reasons, she finds herself in the magnificent North. And she's already had some run-ins with Jax, but over there is where the story like actually unfolds. And Jax, this is like a very mild spoiler for Legendary and Finale. Jax is a fate, and fates are these mystical characters in the Caraval universe who have almost but not quite godlike powers. So they have some magic, and they have certain powers, and they can use that to influence people or do things to them or make them do things. And Evangeline has ended up making a deal with Jax, and yeah, we follow the two of them as they get into adventures and more often than not misadventures. So here's the thing that I love. Okay, there's a lot that I love about these books, so let me start off with the main ones. First of all, I am a sucker for a good looking book. In fact, I bought this trilogy first and then I bought the Caraval trilogy. Why? Because I really love these covers. Look at them. These are so pretty. And our main character's name is Evangeline Fox. And there are all these gorgeous foxes on the covers. There's one headless knight, and there's another one here. And then we have the second book in the series, which is called The Ballad of Never After, which is somehow even prettier. Like, do you see that? And again, the back of the book as well. And now that I've read it, I can recognize where certain elements are from. And I love that. I love when they put proper research into the cover design so that anyone who's read the book can pick it up and be like, oh, this element is a reference to this particular thing. I love that. That shows dedication to your work. Anyway, and then finally, somehow even prettier, we've got A Curse for True Love with it's got more intricate details, and it's got this gorgeous like blue, and the foiling on this book is red, but there's only a couple of places where we've got the foiling. I don't Yeah, it's not really visible. I wish it was. And then again with the back, we've got all this gorgeous details. So yeah, I love the covers. I love the way the story flows. I was a little apprehensive when I started this book about how we're gonna like what the character's voice is going to be like, because with Scarlett, I mentioned this earlier in this vlog. Scarlett sees things in colors, in hues. Her world is vivid and descriptive and like paint, full of colors. I don't know where I was going with that. Evangeline's world is full of fairy tales and magic, and you get that feel. You get the feeling of stepping into a fairy tale world, not just a fantasy, but into a fairy tale. And I really love that, especially for a book that is set in a place where magic and fairy tales and stories are such an important part of the world building. And like the character herself, the main character, has this personal attachment because her mother used to tell us her a bunch of these fairy tales and stories when she was growing up. So I really loved it. All those fears just vanished within the first few like 20, 30, 50 pages. So that was great. And then we've got Evangeline, who's our main character. I like her. She is I just love her. She is decisive. She stands up for what she thinks is right, even if it's something to her own detriment. And she will always, always do the right thing. She doesn't doubt people. There's like, she has a limit to that as well. It's not like she's completely naive and will believe anything that anyone tells her, but she has like a threshold of up to where she's going to forgive people, and after that of where she's going to draw her boundaries. But she also has this thing that no matter what, she'll try to take the high road. She'll try to do the right thing, and I really appreciate that. And especially as someone who, I can't say that I'm like her a lot in that sense, but yeah, as someone who always tries to do the best thing, the right thing, it just struck a chord with me. So that was nice. I enjoyed Jack's characterization in these books much more than in the previous series. But then again, we can argue that in that book he was a side character, and in this one he was a main character. And we understand a lot of his motives. And in the final book, a lot of things are revealed, and I really loved the way that those things happened. Okay, so now for the things that I didn't really enjoy that much in these books. There are like two things that I didn't really like. Firstly, is towards the end, for some reason, we have the resolution, the the thing that makes things okay, comes on a little quickly, a little too easily. I mean, someone can argue that the characters have sacrificed a lot and been through a lot to get to that point, but still, it felt like too easy. And that is something that I felt was the issue with Caraval, the first book, especially with me. And yeah, I'm still not sure how to feel about that. Mostly because I understand that this is a young adult book, and if I were younger, I don't think I would have had this problem. It's probably like the need for things being realistic that comes with age, or the understanding or the way that your brain just starts working and analyzing every little thing. So yeah, and the other issue that I have is that two characters in particular, Luke and Marisol, we meet them on the first page. I don't know what happened to them. Where did they go? There were certain characters that were introduced later on in the book, and we don't know what happened to them either. But my personal pet peeve is with those two characters who were introduced in the very beginning, and then um, they were not mentioned in the ending. I'm not going to tell you how far along in the story they were or were not, but they were just missing from the ending, and I really wanted to know what happened. So that, for some reason, it was like a pet peeve with this book. I just wanted to know what happened. So there's that. Also, I realized that Once Upon a Broken Heart is probably the first romantasy book that I've read. The point of the whole story was the love story, and like the love story was a part, like a big part of the story, especially because Jax is the Prince of Hearts. He is a fate who is destined, mild spoiler, who is destined to keep kissing girls, and they die, and only one girl is supposed to be his one true love. And if he kisses her and she doesn't die, then that's the one. She's the one who is going to be his one true love. But throughout the centuries, he has left a trail of bodies of women that he kissed who were in love with him, who all thought and he thought that they were his one true love. So it is like that particular story, and like fates have tendencies to live out their what do you say, their stories over and over again, which is something that one of the characters mentions. And yeah, so obviously it's going to be a big part. But after Caraval, I didn't realize that we're getting into a romantasy. But for the first time, I think this is like the first romantasy that I've willingly read and continued and not felt like I've been tricked into reading it, and enjoyed and genuinely would recommend. I'm not someone who's big on romantasies. Usually, I like my romance plots as a subplot in the background. For example, with The Cruel Prince, that's more of a political drama with a fantasy setup, and the romance is like simmering in the back of the story, like way, way back, right? But I love it. I love the storyline as well as the character dynamics. And so, yeah, this is an outlier. This is the first book that I actually thoroughly enjoyed. And now I'm curious to see if there are more romantasies out there that are something that I would enjoy. I think that it also helped that this was a young adult book, so it wasn't really spicy per se. So that didn't like come out of nowhere and distract me from the plot, which is an issue that I've had with romantasies, where I felt like I was tricked into reading those. Um, right. So yeah, I am a terrible vlogger, and you're gonna know this if you watch my other video about Sunrise on the Reaping. But I finished almost the entire Caraval universe, and the almost is for Spectacular, which is a novella. It's a Christmas time novella, and it's peak summer. I hardly feel like reading a Christmassy book. I mean, I'm not someone who celebrates Christmas. It's not a part of my culture and my religion, but still, I don't think that I'll be able to um, read a Christmas book at this moment. So maybe when I feel like revisiting the Caraval universe later on in the year, perhaps then I'll read Spectacular. And yeah, that's it. That was my reading vlog, my reading update on these books. And also, I set this TBR. This is a long TBR, and I set it up so that I could continue reading these books for like the next couple of months to come. But I managed to finish these within 2 or 3 weeks, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Because again, it's not a binge. I didn't like pick up the book and not set it down until I read it. But at one point, okay, so I have been having pretty regular hospital visits for my injury, right? And at one point, I was at the hospital with Once Upon a Broken Heart. The next day, I was at the hospital with the Ballad of Never After. And the third day, I had A Curse for True Love. So I finished these books within a span of a day or two each time. Once Upon a Broken Heart took me longer, but then The Ballad of Never After and A Curse for True Love, like that. I think it took me 2 days to finish The Ballad of Never After, and then a day or so to finish A Curse for True Love. So binge reading, that too has been incredible. I enjoyed it, and yeah, I love this. Like, I think it's a cute little adorable little series to have on my shelves, and now I can point to it and talk about it, and that in itself also feels like an achievement, to be honest, when you have so many hundred books on your shelves, and I was able to make a big dent in that number, and that makes me happy. So that's all about my reading vlog. I don't know if I can officially call it a vlog, but yeah, that has been my experience of reading these books. And I'll see y'all in my other reading vlog, which is gonna be a lot shorter, I do believe. And yeah, I guess I need to set a new TBR now for the months of May, June, July. So we'll keep seeing each other in those videos. Thank you for watching. And if you've read this series, tell me how you found it. Am I correct in classifying this as a um, romantasy? And tell me if it's jacks or shocks. I don't know why I have to do this, but jocks. So let me know. All right. Bye.